Those who view our teachings know I watch certain days of the year every year. I mean, every year it's just something I do. I'm not a date setter, I'm a date watcher. However, in this presentation, I'm going to be showing why I sincerely believe New Year's Eve, and I would even say Christmas through New Year's Eve, has potential for when the delay of the first 5 seals comes to an end. Now I say, but it's not. It's just showing another day that I'm watching. I wouldn't say it's something going to be every year, but definitely for this year. Now it would go in line with the delay mentioned in Revelation 10, how the seals will be delayed until this possible from Christmas to New Year's. But if this is to happen, 2 things have to happen first. 2 big things. First, the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle has to come out. 2, they begin the process of setting them up on Christmas Day, and I'll explain why on Christmas Day in a moment. So those are the 2 big things, really. Now, one of the first questions that would be given is, well, if it doesn't happen this New Year's Eve or Christmas time frame, could it happen on one in the future? And the answer is I would suppose so. However, I can only say for this particular one coming right now, I'm talking the one leading us into 2025, I'm seeing things line up in many ways. Now, again, it doesn't mean these parallels can't be applied into future years. In fact, because of me finding it this year, it's going to make me start looking for this time frame in the future as well. But Lord willing, you'll see where I'm coming from. That all being said, let's begin. Let's start with Amos. Amos chapter 8, starting in verse 9. In that day, declares sovereign Yahweh, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. Verse 10. I will turn your religious feasts into mourning and all your singing into weeping. I will make all of you wear sackcloth and shave your heads. I will make that time like mourning for an only son, and the end of it like a bitter day. When reading through Amos, I don't know if anyone else has caught this before, it's difficult to distinguish which kingdom he's talking to. I mean, one moment he's talking to the northern kingdom, and then the next moment he's talking to the southern kingdom. I mean, literally it can be a paragraph to one, the next paragraph to the other, and bouncing back and forth. At times it even seems it could be sentences at a time. But it seems right here in chapter 8, he's talking to both at the same time. Verse 9 shows he's talking about one day. But on that one day, there are feasts, plural, taking place, implying a feast from each kingdom is being celebrated on that one day. Now, this year, New Year's falls during Hanukkah. Neither of these 2 celebrations are of Yahweh's holy days as described in Leviticus 23. Hanukkah is a feast day created by the Jews, and New Year's Eve was created by the rest of the world. Thus, this time could be easily pointing to the time when he says, I will turn your religious feasts, plural, into mourning and all your singing into weeping. Before I can show certain numbers pointing to New Year's Eve this year, I need to be able to explain why it has to start on Christmas Day. Because to me, if nothing happens on Christmas Day this year, then, well, this isn't the year. Or this just is the wrong timing to be looking at, which is very possible. But why Christmas Day this year? Because of where it falls in the Hebrew calendar. Christmas Day this year falls on the 24th day of the 9th month. Why is that significant? Consider. First we have Haggai chapter 2, verse 18. It reads, From this day on, from this 24th day of the 9th month, give careful thought to the day when the foundation of Yahweh's temple was laid. Give careful thought. Is there yet any seed left in the barn? Until now the vine and the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree have not borne fruit. From this day on, I will bless you. Before we address the obvious phrase, from this day on, I will bless you, This translation says, give careful thought to the day when the foundation of Yahweh's temple was laid. However, that's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew doesn't give the past tense of was laid. And it doesn't say when the foundation. The Hebrew word for when here is translated as which or that throughout the rest of the scriptures. Plus, the word for foundation here in the Hebrew is a verb, not a noun, a verb. It's an action word. It's not a noun at all. So it's not talking about the foundation. It's talking about the establishment of something. Action taken for the beginning of something. And in this case, it's definitely related with the temple, as that's the subject at hand. So, verse 18 could easily read like this. From this day on, from this 24th day of the 9th month, give careful thought to the day that begins Yahweh's temple. Give careful thought. Showing us what? Implying we should see something happen on this day, in the future I'm talking, regarding the beginning steps of something for the temple. Something to happen that should cause us to give careful thought to it. Under the premise of everything happening on the world stage right now, what could happen as the start of something for the temple on that day? Now, if the ark and the tabernacle do indeed come out before this day, which again, it has to if this theory is correct, this will prompt the reinstitution of the sacrificial system. According to the prophets, it's done by a priesthood that's not ordained by Yahweh. Thus, the sacrifices they do will be an abomination to him. That's why we read a few verses earlier in this very same chapter of Haggai. Check it out, verses 10 through 14. It reads, on the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahweh came to the prophet Haggai. This is what Yahweh Almighty says. Ask the priests what the law says. Verse 12. If a person carries consecrated meat in the fold of his garment, and that fold touches some bread or stew, some wine, oil, or other food, does it become consecrated? The priests answered, no. Then Haggai said, if a person defiled by contact with a dead body touches one of these things, does it become defiled? Yes, the priest replied, it becomes defiled. Verse 14. Now listen. Then Haggai said, so it is with this people and this nation in my sight, declares Yahweh. Whatever they do and whatever they offer there is defiled. Verse 14 again. Haggai said, so it is with this people and this nation in my sight, declares Yahweh. Whatever they do and whatever they offer there is defiled. It's defiled by this people. And just then, a few verses later, we're told to give careful thought to what happens for the beginning of the temple on the 24th day of the 9th month, the very same day.
I've got a question. Sure. I've got a question there, because you've kind of made it through most of the passages from what you said to me. But as far as the temple and looking at it from the apostolic writings and Yeshua, as far as his body being the temple and this blessing, I'm looking at it as a positive for the temple. And what you're saying, and I agree, and a lot of my brothers and sisters who are still kind of, I like to say they still have some baggage with dispensationalism, they still would, again, they would still teach that for prophecy to be fulfilled, the sacrifices must start. And it's when the Antichrist, I'm air quoting that for a reason, when the Antichrist comes in and he stops the sacrifices, that is going to be an abomination. And to what you just pointed out in Isaiah 66:3, no. Isaiah's asking a rhetorical question from Yahweh. Who do you think you are building me a house?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be covering Isaiah here in a second. Go ahead, though.
Oh, sorry. Well, go ahead, and I'll jump in later.
Okay. No, because that you're leading right into everything I'm going to be saying. So, anyway, continue. So, but the 24th day of the ninth month, Christmas. Okay, this year anyway, is the day before Hanukkah. Okay, the time that celebrates the rededication of the temple. So, what could happen the day before the celebration of rededicating the temple? Something we should take special note of. What could it be? The red heifer sacrifice. That which the Jews say has to happen before anything can happen with the temple or the sacrificial system. A sacrifice that's not needed for what they say. I have a teaching specifically addressing this, and it's simply titled The Red Heifer Sacrifice. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to view it. But the Jews maintain this is a requirement, and yet, as the scriptures declare, as we've read, none of their sacrifices will be accepted by Yahweh. Not one. Now here's Isaiah 66. It says it. Verse 1 discusses them wanting to build the house of Yahweh, the temple. Then verses 3, and if I can remember, it talks about the sacrifices from verse 3 on, or maybe a few verses after it, how they're all an abomination to him. This is why we made our teaching simply titled, Beware of the Coming Sacrifices. Again, that's one I really encourage you to watch.
Well, now, linking it back to Antiochus Epiphanes and what he did, the historical account is he offered a swine on the altar.
Yep.
And according to Isaiah 66:3, even a grain offering, even as something as simple as a grain offering will be like swine's blood.
Yes.
I see the connection there between the historical account and what most people, most in Christianity, and most Messianic Jews believe has to happen. And I believe they're going to be missing it by several years.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm right there with you. In fact, Isaiah 66 takes you all the way through the end times, from desiring the third temple and the starting of the sacrifices to the very end. So if one hasn't read all of Isaiah 66, they should read it, because it discusses what you just talked about, from the sacrifice, the temple, them wanting to build the temple, and then the sacrifices that are an abomination, like you just mentioned. It's like, you mentioned the grain, how it's, if someone offers grain, it's like swine's blood. But not only that, it discusses how if you break,
a cow is akin to murdering a man, killing a man.
And then the lamb is like breaking a dog's neck.
Breaking a puppy's neck.
Yep. So, I mean, dude, this is something that Yahweh takes as an abomination, what's going to be happening here. So it's something that needs to be considered in a completely different light. And if you have never read, again, all of Isaiah 66, from the viewpoint of taking you from the beginning to the end of Revelation, or just the end times, I encourage you to read it. It's something that needs to be done.
And I would say that from those that now have this understanding that Yeshua meant what he said about the law and the prophets and calling the heavens and earth as witnesses, that's sort of Isaiah 65 and 66 has long been sort of the go-to when I'm talking to my Christian brothers and sisters to talk about, here's what happens when Yahweh returns. When Yeshua returns, look how upset he is about this eating of swine flesh.
Yeah, right. Yep. No, I'm with you.
All right, carry on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, no, I'm with you. So now, backtracking a little bit, under the element, if they are going to be bringing up these sacrifices, starting to do them, tell me, what do you believe will happen when the Jews take over the Temple Mount to set up their sacrificial system? I mean, it's going to be crazy. I mean, Jerusalem will be surrounded. But here's the thing. The 24th day of the 9th month is a day we should be watching. Not only because of the coming sacrifices, but also because of what we see in verse 19 through 23. So let's back up to Haggai again. Let's read now verses 19 through 23. It says, "From this day on, I will bless you." Again, we read that earlier. Verse 20. "The word of Yahweh came to Haggai a second time on the 24th day of the month. Tell Zerubbabel." Now, please know, Zerubbabel simply means born in Babel. An interesting element to take note of. Continuing on. The governor of Judah, that I will shake the heavens and the earth. I will overturn royal thrones and shatter the power of the foreign kingdoms. I will overthrow chariots and their drivers. Horses and their riders will fall, each by the sword of his brother. Now verse 23. On that day, declares Yahweh Almighty, I will take you, my servant Zerubbabel, or shall I say it this way? I will take you, my servant, born in Babel, son of Shealtiel, declares Yahweh, and I will make you my signet ring, for I have chosen you, declares Yahweh Almighty. Here we see, verse 19, that we will be blessed from this day forward, which is important. Again, this day, 24th day of the 9th month. And I'm not sure we can underscore that enough. This is a declaration that is to that specific day. But when we see verse 23 say, we will be like a signet ring because we were his chosen, there's something here. However, the Hebrew doesn't say, I'll make you like my signet ring. It actually says, I will put my seal on or in you. From this day on, we will be blessed, and Yahweh starts to seal us. Does this sound familiar? Please consider what we read in Revelation chapter 7. It says, do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed. And then it continues on from the 144,000. So the question would be, well, then how long does this sealing take? Or where are they taken to be sealed? Well, those are questions I don't know. I'm not sure we're going to know until it happens. Revelation 9 says, though, that the locusts of the fifth trumpet have no authority to touch those that are sealed. This is important. So it seems these who are sealed are still around during the days the locusts are released. But here's where things start to get interesting, at least to me. We notice these locusts are released for 5 months in Revelation 9. Why is that so interesting? Because it matches what we see in Ezekiel chapter 4. In the Septuagint, I'm talking. First, we notice in verses 1 through 3 that Jerusalem gets surrounded, and that's a sign for the northern kingdom of Israel. But what's this sign to the northern kingdom for? I mean, seriously, could it be that it's a warning that their destruction is coming just the same? Verse 6 shows us that the siege on Judah is for 40 days. We then see verse 4 shows us that the house of Israel, the northern kingdom we're talking, will face judgment just the same, but their judgment is for 150 days. Between the two kingdoms, there's 190 days of direct judgment. I sincerely believe these two time frames overlap, meaning they most likely will start either at the same time or overlap within a week or so. The 190 days is the total between the two kingdoms. It's not necessarily a total number of days in sequential order. Now, the question is going to be, well, why do I believe this? Because it's what we see at the flood. It rained for how long? 40 days. And it says the waters covered the earth for what? 150 days. The exact same numbers here in Ezekiel 4. And so Isaiah 46:10 says, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. But the rains could have been coming for a week, let's say, before the flood started and covering the mountains. I don't know. But either way, we see 40 days and 5 months at the flood, and we see 40 days and 5 months in the end just the same, along with the 5 months mentioned in Revelation 9. So these are parallels to me. We just can't overlook them. When you see something in the beginning and then it parallels with prophecy in the end, we got to take note of those things. Plus, Ezekiel says there's a warning given. It's when Jerusalem starts to get surrounded. This is the very verse that in Ezekiel 4 that Yeshua was referencing in Matthew 24 and Luke 21. Luke 21:20 says the following: "When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near." It says its desolation is near. So it's starting to get surrounded is when the warning of what's coming. Now, this makes me wonder if we really could see a 7-day warning as with the flood. Because Yeshua said, when you see this, that's a warning. Okay, just like Noah had the warning 7 days beforehand. So, here's the thing. If all of this is tied together, and that's a big if, I get it. But if it's all tied together, we'll see the Ark of the Covenant come out sometime before the 24th day of the 9th month, which again happens to be Christmas this year. Now, maybe a day or two before, or maybe a week before, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it could come out on the day, and on that day, then something happens just the same. But regardless, we'll see something take place on that day, the 24th day of the 9th month. That moment. Sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
A question. I can see how maybe they could do the red heifer and sort of as a historical event related to the Feast of Dedication and as it's been practiced by Judaism and their customs and traditions. My question is, why do you believe that, in your current understanding, that the ark must come out as opposed to perhaps events just start rolling with a red heifer sacrifice? What's the prerequisite for the ark?
I think one, I'm reminded of what's given to us in Maccabees. Okay, it says specifically that Jeremiah is saying that the ark will remain hidden until the time comes for Yahweh to gather his people. So if that prophecy through Jeremiah recorded in the Maccabees is true, that's the predecessor of when it takes place. And also with what Yeshua said, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded, okay, and then what? When you see the abomination that causes desolation. And as we just mentioned, it's like these sacrifices are going to be the abomination. But to your point, why do we need the ark? For me, I think, because right now they have been wanting to do sacrifices for how long? I mean, they've done it several times, like on Passover, but it's never been where it needs to be, all these different things. When the ark comes out, and I say when, not if, when it comes out, it will supercharge everything. It will thrust, it will embolden them, and it will cause everything to kick in motion. And again, I see it as the fulfillment of what's given through Jeremiah regarding the end times beginning, and Yahweh comes to gather his people. That's my current mindset. Does that make sense what I just said?
It does. I just wanted to understand where you're coming from. I guess I'm a little more wiggly in seeing that perhaps it could just be them doing their red heifer, which they believe they have to do before they start building even just an altar. We talked about that earlier about let's see what this altar looks like. But I believe even if they just did and followed Torah and did, uncut stones as the altar, and they started doing sacrifices without a tabernacle, without the ark, that just the sacrifices themselves will be an abomination. And for anybody listening, it is the exact same Hebrew word that's used in Isaiah 66:3 that is used in Daniel that everybody talks about for the abomination of desolation.
Correct.
And then just real quick in Matthew, the abomination must stand in the holy, the hagios topos, the location. So many people will teach that means a temple or even a tabernacle. No, it's just the location. The topos, right. The topos is hagios, is holy, is set apart, right, irrespective of what might be on it right now, even if it's the dome of a rock and an ongoing abomination.
Right.
God has no son. I mean, we've had an ongoing abomination fulfillment. But my other question was, how would you respond if people go, oh, well, that was fulfilled back in 70-ish AD, and I'm teeing you up for the Hebraic understanding of how prophecy can be fulfilled in patterns. In other words,
I was just going to say, there's always going to be something. History is cyclical, and so you're always going to see something in history pointing to the future, and it's happening all over again, Not everything to the detail, but it's always going to point. Now, if I can come back, I want to address something you had mentioned regarding the element of why the ark has to be there. Two things. One, when we continue reading in Ezekiel, we've been reading from Ezekiel 4, and if you continue in through Ezekiel 8 and Ezekiel 9, and I have a teaching on this also, it's titled, What is the Idol of Jealousy? And it talks about this idol of jealousy being set up on the north side, and it says in front of the north gate. Okay, so that tells me something's going to be set up in front of the north gate. And if you look at the Temple Mount, I cover this in that teaching, that is the only, like I said, but the largest area on the Temple Mount that is cleared out. It's open at the north, in front of the north gate. The whole north section of the Temple Mount is cleared and open. So what does that mean? Chances are I can see them easily setting up the tabernacle with the Ark of the Covenant in it, and they will resume everything right there. They'll plow down that Dome of the Rock, and they'll start building the third temple. And man, that will be like starting World War III times 10. So it's all there. And I'm also regarding the ark, why it's needed. I think when you look at, and I can't think of the exact scripture, but I think it's in either 1st or 2nd Thessalonians, where Paul says the Antichrist sets himself up in God's temple claiming to be God. And I discussed this verse in my teaching simply titled The Return of the Tent. And that verse does not say temple. It actually refers to the tabernacle. It's a tent. And so I think it's very much so all going to play a role. Does that help all the more? So I kind of backtracked. Forgive me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Again, I guess I'm more open to the abomination could start just by the sacrifices, and I'm not ruling out a tabernacle or even a future brick and mortar structure. People,
right?
I'm
with you.
I don't think they're prerequisites to fulfill prophecy.
See, I guess for me, I would say it is. In conjunction with, especially what we read in Ezekiel 8 and 9 regarding the idol of jealousy. And again, in that teaching, what is the idol of jealousy? It's why would the Ark of the Covenant be an idol of jealousy? Because it represents what they did not keep, the covenant. Okay, and so it's an idol. It's jealousy on Yahweh's part. Yahweh's a jealous God. And so it all stems from there.
And I would say certainly it would be what Judah did not keep and has not kept by adding to their vain traditions of men, which Yeshua condemned. But it would also be a testimony of Yeshua against the northern house of Israel, what I now call Christianities. It's sort of like a dual testimony against both of the sisters. I like to go to Ezekiel 23 a lot.
And exactly.
The more things change, the more they have stayed the same for both houses. And we just see the modern expression of the house of Israel or Ephraim or Christianity just still engaging in the same three primary sins of Jeroboam that no king ever repented of and ultimately led to. So I'm always trying to piece together, like you mentioned about Amos earlier. Is this to the house of Judah? Is this to the house of Israel? Is this to the combined house?
Yes.
And I totally agree with you that prophecy, as far as it being toward their religious festivals, it's their holidays, it's their holy days. It is not his Moedim. It is not his appointed times. And I can see how he's going to cause someday, whether it's this Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, I can see a judgment happening on one of these vain, man-made, traditional, made up out of thin air, just because we love our traditions and our customs. And I can see major judgment happening.
Yeah, it can all start there.
More than anything, probably, as far as, and it just happens to align this year.
And again, this may not be the year. I get it. I mean, but like you just said, there's reasons for us to be watching this. And I've mentioned that before in several of the teachings that I got about judgment can happen on Christmas to New Year's and Hanukkah. I've done that before. But this year, things are lining up, and we can get into that in a little bit more. Okay, well, let's get back on topic. Okay, so okay, let's just assume for a second that, at least, and let's go for it. Let's go on your premise here. The Ark of the Covenant doesn't come out yet. Let's just say that for a second. But the sacrifices do, okay? And they're going to try and do that on the Temple Mount, okay? So that moment will cause Jerusalem to start getting surrounded. There's no doubt about it, okay? And that will be, in my opinion, Jerusalem being surrounded, the abomination taking place. That's the warning that the destruction of Jerusalem is coming. It's at hand. I mean, we're talking days. And possibly the destruction for the northern kingdom just the same, because it says it's a warning for the northern kingdom. So you don't give a warning to the northern kingdom about what's coming to the south. You give a warning to somebody because it's coming their way too. So that's why I'm saying when Ezekiel 4 discusses this, it's saying judgment is coming to the northern kingdom too. Now, but on this day, he says he starts sealing his people. Now, all that being said, allow me to run us through some timing that lines up perfectly with everything I just gave us for this year. Now, again, could it be another year in the future? Very possible. I'm not saying yes or no because I haven't checked all the dates for those. But again, I've only looked into this year, and this is what I found. If the 24th day of the 9th month this year, again, Christmas Day, is the day of the warning, and that's a big thing. So if nothing happens by Christmas Day, dude, as far as I'm concerned, this is kind of meaningless at this point. Yeah, I suppose something could still happen New Year's Eve. I'm not saying it can't. But with what I'm seeing, it's not going to be the fulfillment of all the stuff that I'm looking at. Well, 7 days from Christmas takes us exactly to New Year's Eve. 7 days. So there's your 7-day warning on Christmas Day, just like Noah had. And then all of a sudden it all happens on New Year's Eve. A day that covers both feast days, okay, in both kingdoms. We're talking New Year's Eve and Hanukkah. So both the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom lining up with their feast days, and it's one single day. A day that matches Amos saying a day of judgment for both kingdoms are celebrating. Remember, the 5 months that Ezekiel 4 said, the 150 days, and then also in Revelation 9, well, there is exactly 150 days from New Year's Eve all the way to Shavuot this next year. A perfect 150 days. And what did Yeshua say? 4 times in John chapter 6, he said, I'd raise them up on what? The last day. So these 5 months leading up to that last day are when Yahweh's people are sealed and protected from the locusts. Again, remember, they're released for 5 months. It could also be the same time of the martyrs in the 5th seal. This ties in perfectly with what we see Babylon does during this time as well, because it's in Revelation 18 that Yahweh judges Babylon because of how it treats the saints and the apostles and the prophets. This is a day, the 150, end of the 150, when we would see the resurrection take place. Okay, see the judgment on Babylon. And you see that's the end of the 150 days. Again, it all wraps up with the culmination with the great earthquake. All of it taking place at the same time. The resurrection would be the time of all of it culminating at the end. And it also lines up with the 6th seal with the destruction of Babylon just the same. Okay, I feel like I'm kind of repeating here. Now, I've always thought the locusts of Revelation chapter 9 are the releasing of the fallen angels from the abyss. Something I still see as possible. I mean, I really do. However, a friend of mine once told me and pointed out how it could be that and something in the natural as well. Now, consider what Jeremiah says regarding the future judgment that comes on Babylon. And this is the verse that she had mentioned to me. It made me think, well, wow, this is interesting. So it's Jeremiah 51, verse 14. And it says, Yahweh Almighty has sworn by himself, I will surely fill you with men as with a swarm of locusts, and they will shout in triumph over you. Hit pause. What has been going on in America over the last 2, 3, 4 years with the southern border? Everyone has been screaming how all these terrorists have been climbing the border, crossing the border left and right. And it's been documented. They've seen them, these terrorists. And not just America, though. Look at Europe, how it's been they've been saying terrorists have been coming into them. So, I mean, this is not something that's just like, oh, goodness, I didn't know this was happening. Everyone has been screaming this has been wrong. Something's been wrong with our open borders like this. Not only that, the whole element of Jerusalem getting surrounded is the start of it all, with judgment specifically starting on Jerusalem and the people of Judah. So here it starts with Jerusalem and Judah, and then it comes on the rest by what? This flood of people that Yahweh likens unto what? Locusts that'll overcome the people. And again, that's Jeremiah discussing what's going to happen to them. Regarding it all starting, though, with Jerusalem and Judah, the people of Judah, because it says that. What should this make us think about? Specifically saying judgment happening on Judah, the people of Judah, and Jerusalem. Think of it what it says in Daniel chapter 9. I'm going to read verse 24 here. It says, 77s are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression. I'm going to stop right here. So who is it guarding? Your people, those in Judah, and the holy city, Jerusalem. That which Ezekiel says will be surrounded. Okay, so they're tying it together here. 70 weeks, it says, are appointed for your people and the holy city. Check this out. 70 weeks to the day, the first day of Hanukkah, takes you all the way to Passover of 2026. First day of Hanukkah this year, you go exactly a full 70 weeks will take you to Passover, the night of Passover 2026. So there's a parallel. There's a perfect number date that takes you to a biblical date. And then again, we got it going to the 5 months from New Year's Eve all the way to what? Shavuot, when Yahweh takes his people for the resurrection. Could this literally be the 70 weeks of Daniel we're talking about? When Yahweh says 70 weeks are decreed, could it literally be 70 weeks? And then you're going to have people say, oh, those 70 weeks are this, it's that. I'm not saying those other views are wrong. I get it. There's lots of ways that Scripture can be interpreted, and they all be correct.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to say. They could all be correct. It could be 70. I'm seeing how it can be 70 Jubilees, 77s of years,
490 years, exactly.
At the very end, 70 by golly weeks.
Yes.
490 days.
Yeah, I'm telling you, what concerns me with the body of Messiah is we all get hooked on this view or that view and that view and say, this is the way it's got to be. And I'm not saying, again, that those views are wrong, but we all need to be open and going, well, maybe there's multiple views and it all links together. That's for me. Those 70 weeks, okay, from the first day of Hanukkah this year takes us all the way to Passover of 2026. Here's the thing. I can't help but think of what Yeshua said in Matthew 26. I'm going to read it. It's in verse 29. It says, I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. It's right there. He's saying the 70 weeks takes us all the way to this very moment that he's saying, I will not partake of any of this until we're all together in the kingdom at the end of those 70 weeks. I'm sorry, I get excited thinking about this kind of stuff. To me, it's so crazy cool.
So would it be fair to say that you believe tabernacles, it would be fulfilled way in the distant future, or when would you put into your timeline Yom Teruah, what prophetic significance it has as far as a shadow to be fulfilled, Yom Kippurim? So how do you, in your understanding right now, where do you see that factoring in based on this timeline you've laid out?
I'm with you. First, I think the next feast to be what we would call fulfilled is Shavuot. Okay. And so because we people can say, well, second chapter of Acts, no, that wasn't the fulfillment. Paul mentions like 2 or 3 times that was the deposit of what is to come. Okay.
The down payment.
Exactly. And so it actually comes to fruition on Shavuot again. Again, that will be the new covenant. All right. After that, now to your point, so when do we see trumpets, atonement, and Sukkot being fulfilled by way of the reality in the scriptures for fulfillment for us? To me, my current understanding is, and I mentioned this in one of my teachings on Shavuot, my current thought is, and I could be wrong, totally wrong in this, but I see the day of trumpets is literally the last trumpet. It will be the day of the second resurrection. Okay, when everybody, those who are not resurrected in the first resurrection, will be resurrected at the last trump, day of trumpets. And then what do you have? But 10 days later, you have the great white throne judgment on when? The Day of Atonement. And then what do you have after that? Leads us right into Sukkot, which is when Yahweh comes down. And so we have Yahweh and Yeshua, all of us together, entering what? Into the millennium. And I'm sorry, the millennium, to eternity from that moment forward.
The eighth great day. The eighth
Correct.
Day. And again, I would be with you on what I believe is symbolized by the eighth day. It's new beginnings. It's like the new, it would be 1 Corinthians 15 when Yeshua turns things back over to the Father. And we just don't have much information on what happens after that time period. So
I agree.
So yeah, and I could see how I was up to probably almost dogmatic on no, the resurrection must be Yom Teruah. I still lean that way. I will say, Steve, you're teaching because you make a good point that there's trumpets going on Shavuot. There's some shouting going on Shavuot.
Cloud covering the mountain.
You wiggled me down to maybe 95, 90-ish%. So now I do look to Shavuot. And again, I think we need to be looking at all these, obviously always be looking at the Moedim and testing certain things, as I believe we are approaching the end of the second day.
Well, here's the thing. I think we all need to be, tweaking our understanding along the way. We can't be dogmatic, especially when it comes to prophecy. I mean, yeah, I get it. You can be dogmatic on something, but we got to remember the fact element of we could all be right on these different things, and it all layers together. Now, if I can have some fun for a moment, I am a conspiracy theorist on a lot of different things. And a lot of things I don't touch with a 10-foot pole because I don't know. And I don't think we're all going to know until the other side anyway. But I remember, this has been years ago, a friend sent me a video about, how the number 923 is in movies and TV shows all over. And I said, okay, I'll watch it. And I watched it. I'm going, oh my goodness, this is crazy. It really is 923. I just sent a friend a video of it too, and he didn't know about it either. And so, and ever since I have seen these few videos, I have seen multiple other shows that they don't even cover. I'm going, oh, I saw 923. I saw all these different things. And a lot of people interpret it as at September 23rd. Something has to happen on September 23rd because that's 923. However, what if it's talking about the 23rd day of the 9th Hebrew month? I don't know. It's something that, now, if that's the case, then let's watch 923 too, So
feel free to edit this out because it's going to sound horrible, but I sometimes believe that those of the occult understand prophecy better than some of our Christian brothers and sisters do. And I'm saying that for a reason, because again, Bailey from back in the early 20th century, other theosophists, other no doubt Luciferian occultists were pointing to 2025 as the golden age, as the dawn, as the awakening, as when the Christ consciousness, the age of Aquarius would come in.
You said 2025 they said that?
Yeah, okay. No, they were saying it back in the early 20th century, in other words, back around whenever Bailey, she founded the Lucius Trust, the Lucifer Trust.
Okay, I have no idea
the UN religion. So. Yeah. I mean, they've been pointing to 2025 as when the golden age, the golden dawn of America, when the world would become new again. You get into this. So they've been pointing to this year in the occult, 2025, as when they're looking for the Christ consciousness. And again, none of this is biblical, by the way, but that's the year they've been pointing to.
Wow.
And I just see it aligning with sort of my, again, this from talking with me. I believe 28 AD-ish was the earliest that I believe Yeshua ascended and returned to his place. So, And I'm still more of a 3.5 year guy as opposed to you. And so I'm looking at, again, just watching. That's all I'm doing is watching. My buddy Doug gets mad at me sometimes going, and I'm like, dude, I'm not date setting. I'm just watching world events align, converge, and accelerate.
Amen.
Exactly like I have believed since I was a little kid, because my daddy, basically, I believe when he first got saved, he was studying scripture. This Southern Baptist deacon named his publication company Jubilee Publications, okay? He was studying all this stuff. Now, he believed year 6000 was sort of like some of our Messianic brothers. They thought Yeshua was returning, 30 years, basically 24 years ago now. They were looking at his birthday. My dad did. I was arguing with my dad going, no, Dad, it's not his birth. Not that the birth is not significant. It is his death that started the 2-day count. It is his ascension that started this 2-day count. And so nothing I'm seeing with cryptocurrency, central digital currency, what's going on with AI, what's going on with the ability to track and monitor people, what's going on between Russia and Ukraine and what could happen there, what's going on with China, what's going on with Iran and North Korea. I mean, none of this
and Syria is just this week. With Syria just collapsing this week.
None of this is shocking me.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to tell my college buddies, I hope I'm wrong, but I really don't want to be wrong. I'm not looking forward to, I'm kind of not that I'm dogmatic on this, but I do see a harpazo of a man child, not the way we learned the rapture from pre-trib and before a 7-year tribulation period. We're going to
resurrection is biblical, period. It's the timing, and where's it at? That's the question for everybody.
And I still think those harpazoed might get Paul harpazoed and sit back down on a Blues Brothers mission from God.
All right, moving right along. Okay, here's the thing, though. I mean, because I do find it interesting what you mentioned about all those things about 2025 and how they've been saying this for. I had no idea what you just mentioned about all that. So, but that's cool because, well, I say it's cool. Forgive me, I don't mean it that way. It leans that what if my theory is correct, this is what we could be seeing. Now, here's the thing, though. I want to make it clear that for me, the ark has to come out. And at the very least, to your point, the sacrifices or something has to start on Christmas Day-ish, okay, to set us up for what's coming, regarding New Year's Eve, how that's 2 feast days that line up on one day and ushering in that time of judgment. To me, it lines up with all those things you were saying. Now,
I can see them doing the red heifer, Steve, believing they have to do the red heifer, and then them starting the 7-day feast of dedication, because it's a 7-day feast. That's biblical. In other words, go ahead.
I'm going to say that goes right in line, because they'll take those 7 days. You go back to the Torah. How many days is needed to make the altar ready and the priests ready? It's a 7-day time frame, a sacrifice for each day. And it's a 7-day process. So they would take those 7 days, and on the 8th day, they'll rejoice. Because I don't think what people realize is, if you go back to the book of Maccabees, and I cover this in my teaching regarding Hanukkah and the end times and stuff I made years ago, it was a second Sukkot. That's all it was. They were celebrating Sukkot. Again, that's why it's 8 days. There's nothing about oil lasting 8 days, blah, blah, blah. No, they were celebrating a delayed Sukkot, okay? And so that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a time of dedicating the temple all over. Well, the temple time frame of how they did it and everything. And this, they'll do it for what? The tabernacle, in my opinion, when it comes out. So, but here's the thing, too. For me, going back to your element regarding the resurrection, for me, yeah, I consider myself a pre-tribber, okay, but not what the church calls pre-trib, okay, because to me, the first 5 seals have to happen first, and that is going to be a time of devastation, a time of trial, a time we will have to go through. And if you're of the 5 wise virgins, then you'll be in that place sealed by Yahweh and protected. If you're the 5 foolish virgins, you'll be of those who have to go through that time. Okay, and I am convinced in my heart, yeah, maybe I brainwashed myself on it, okay? But from what I'm seeing in the scriptures, I can't get away from it. You can't tell me that Yeshua can just come like that. No, there are things that have to happen, and I'm talking things of devastation and what we're talking about here. And if I'm correct, and I could be wrong again, I admit, but the resurrection takes place at the 6th seal, okay? And that is where we're going to see all the devastation begin by way of the great earthquake and then the destruction of Babylon. And that all happens at the resurrection. But that means you've got to go through the first 5 seals. And go ahead.
The rich men, the Bezoses of the world, the those that have the billionaires, they are building their bunkers.
Oh, all over.
Mean, so again, it's almost like they know something is coming.
Yep.
You know.
Well, and here's the thing too. I mean, Yeshua said to his disciples, this is Matthew 24:15-ish. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination of desolation, okay, that causes desolation. So meaning what? You're going to see it, all right? And that's our sign. When you see this and Jerusalem being surrounded, it's your time to get out of Dodge. Pray for the Father to lead you to get out of the city, wherever you're at. And so, but again, the first 5 seals have to happen first. And then you see, that 5-month period.
And to your point, we're not giving a timeline in Matthew 24. I would link that up to, I believe what Yeshua is referring to as Daniel 12. And so that's where again, I'm not dogmatic. I kind of hope you're right. That means things just accelerate a little quicker.
Right.
Right. Through this time period. And that means those that are in covenant will get to meet Yeshua in, earlier than what my current understanding is. But I'm open to, like, by now, I'm open to having a discussion with most people, as long as they're just not, and I really respect you, because you're like, this is my current understanding now. I might have a different current understanding next week.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, we have to be like that, and my opinion, we have to be like that. So
no, that would be biblical. You can stand on that. We need to, it's not, no one is going to necessarily increase their kingdom status on getting prophecy 100% correct. But I do believe their kingdom status could be lowered on how they disagree with others.
Amen. Oh, man, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's just because we're supposed to love one another. Man, that's what defines us as Yeshua's disciples. All men will know you by disciples if you love one another. So let's work this out, But again, to bring this into a wrapping up, it's like, for me, where I'm at today, again, on that element, we have to see the ark come out, or at least, to your point, see some kind of sacrifices begin on the 24th day of the 9th month, because of what the scriptures say. Again, namely in Haggai, okay, regarding that. And you can go even into Ezekiel 4, we discussed, but namely Haggai chapter 2, because that's the day that we're sealed, and that's the day we're to watch for something to begin. Again, the action verb taking place regarding the tabernacle or the temple. So if we don't see anything by that time, I'm going to say, okay, well, maybe next year or some other year regarding this time frame. But at the very least, I think this shows a pattern on this year that we can watch in future years, just the same.
Brother, I appreciate it. If you want to add anything to close out your show, this is your show.
Oh, no, I am thankful for the opportunity, brother. I am so thankful that we've had this opportunity to discuss this stuff. And hopefully, Lord willing, it'll help others to consider this. And again, if nothing happens this year, then at least give us new thoughts to look into the future for things in the future coming. Amen.
All right. Amen.